ancient civilizations that were separated by centuries, and yet this same pictogram was discovered in every one of them.
They're smiling.
I think they want us to come and find them.
We're all here because of a map you two kids found in a cave.
Not a map, an invitation.
And now, the very important dudes and dudettes in film history with Matthew Price.
Welcome to another very important dudes and dudettes in film history. I'm Matthew Price, here to educate, inculcate, and elucidate, this time on the multi-pronged career of veteran director Sir Ridley Scott. Scott has worked in almost every available genre, from sword and sandal epics to small comedies, everything in between. And yet, he's an auteur by most definitions. There is such a thing as a Ridley Scott film, and it's almost impossible to really understand his work unless you filter it through one central lens, and that lens is advertising. Ridley Scott is one of the first film directors to come from the world of commercial advertising filmmaking, and most people in the 1970s didn't think that it was actually possible or likely that anyone from that world could make a decent feature film. Scott paved the way for almost a whole generation of future filmmakers. Just take a look at this ad for Chanel No. 5. There is a ridiculous sense of iconography at play here, from the way Carol Bouquet looks, the car she's in, the old man she kisses. Scott understands how the power of the image can actually manufacture meaning. You can actually look at any of his films from the late 70s and 80s and see exactly what I mean. Movies like The Duelist, Blade Runner, Someone to Watch Over Me, they're all good films, but they're also pretty with a capital P. Even a movie that he produced, like The Hunger, really just still looks like a perfume ad. Scott understood, probably quicker than anyone, just how rapidly we were going to approach a place where the image of a film was actually going to be the substance and was going to be the meaning that people would take away from a film. And Sir Ridley often paid the price with both critics and audiences who just couldn't understand that what they were seeing was the future of filmmaking, a place where the image would replace the word. Even a really beloved film like Blade Runner was actually a flop on its initial release, especially considering it had the biggest star in the world in it in Harrison Ford, and came out in 1982. One critic called it Blade Crawler, and another one dubbed it science fiction pornography. The movie just didn't connect to the larger audience. Scott took the defeats and then spent the 90s wandering around trying to figure out what he was good at. Occasionally he'd make something as good as Thelma and Louise, but most of the time there were films like 1492, White Squall, G.I. Jane, not things that really connected with an audience, but at the same time he was finding his voice and trying to figure out how he was going to reconnect. But then, with Gladiator, Scott really found his directorial voice. Now look, I don't personally love the story of Maximus, but a lot of people did really like it. I'd really have to be some kind of idiot not to acknowledge that the movie just reeks of self-confidence and bravado. It connected to larger audiences, it put Scott onto the A-list for directors, and he really cemented his place there with Black Hawk Down and Hannibal. He also found his De Niro on that film, Russell Crowe, the actor he's worked with more than any other. They've actually made 5 films together, 2 period action films, a drama, a thriller, and a quirky little comedy. But none of that matters. The reason we're really here is because Ridley Scott is headed back to the scene of his greatest triumph, and that's Alien. Alien is a movie so brimming and overflowing with iconic images that it actually overcame the criticisms of Ridley Scott, and even though it's a movie built on image, it's considered a classic. It's the ultimate horror science fiction mashup. Now, Scott has a new film coming out called Prometheus. I believe the kids today call it a prequel. And in this prequel, he's going to show us all of the events that came before Alien and really led up to some of the most... Oh, I'm being told I can't say anymore. The power of the moving image has really evolved over time, and the trend away from words and towards pictures has been inexorable. Sir Ridley Scott has really helped move that transition along, and I, for one, am very much looking forward to seeing where he takes us next. His new film Prometheus opens on June the 8th. In the meantime, I'm Matthew Price. You can find me on Twitter or at mamo.ca. And for the Substream, this has been another edition of Very Important Dudes and Dudettes in Film History.